And here we go. Namo MyoHoRenGeKyo. Thanks for being here. We're starting a new Go show today called The Supremacy of the Law. And as you know by now, when Nichiren talks about the law, the law for him is synonymous with MyoHoRenGeKyo, or the Lotus Sutra, right? Which stands atop all of the teachings, not apart from, but on top of. So understand the Lotus Sutra isn't a singular teaching. It is the ultimate teaching, the ultimate goal of all of Shakyamuni's teaching. But the Lotus Sutra certainly represents the pinnacle, the again, ultimate aim of Buddhism and its teachings. So when Nichiren refers to the law, he's referring to all of the teachings in general, and more specifically to the teaching of the Lotus Sutra, or as we know it, MyoHoRenGeKyo. This letter was written to, or is addressed to, the daughter of a woman whom Nichiren has written to before. That she and I believe her daughter maybe, anyway, visited him while he was in exile on Sado. Now he's writing this letter in 1275. He's basically retired to the Minobu area where he's kind of isolated, but communicates regularly, daily, through letters in these Go shows, which is why we have so many to go through. And in different tones, they explicate his doctrine of the Lotus Sutra. So, anything else I should prep you with? This Go show is going to be about, again, maybe from a slightly different point of view, but the resolute mind required to study and practice the law for the optimal life experience that we have available through our Buddha wisdom, our Buddha knowledge, our Buddha-ness, if you will. Because that is experienced through Bodhisattva practices along with our own, as explicated in the Lotus teachings. Practicing with this resolve is also the best way to propagate, implying, again, shoju practice, right? But even when shakabuku is required, it is backed up with constant shoju practice. So that's an interesting aspect of this Go-sho. All right, so without further ado, let's hop into it. When Buddhism, as Nichiren begins, had not been yet introduced in China, the writings of such sages as the three sovereigns, the five emperors, and the three kings, Tai Kung Wang, Tan the Duke of Chao, and Lao Tzu, and Confucius, were called the canons or classics. Through these teachings, the people learned propriety and came to understand the debt of gratitude they owed their parents. There's that filial thing again, or filial. And a clear distinction was drawn between the ruler and the ruled, so that the country was governed wisely. Not that these rules applied to the ruler as well as the ruled, so they shared in the teaching, but from two distinct points of view, right? The people obeyed the leaders who followed these teachings, and heaven answered their prayers, their meditations, their desires. A child who failed to obey them was labeled as unfilial, there you go, and a subject who violated them was punished as a traitor. So the filial relationship wasn't only in the family, father, mother, siblings, but also ruler to ruled. So the ruler played the role of parent to the nation. When the Buddhist scriptures were first brought to China from India, Some people said that they should be accepted, and while others said they should be rejected. Well, tradition again gets in the way of progress. But this is a huge, China is a very huge place. So is India. And so these teachings, these Buddhist teachings, would not only be accepted amongst the citizenry, but because of the history, as Nichiren preps you, the rulers, the governing bodies, and the people both were governing on the at the onus, if you will, of these proprietary teachings of human behavior and human existence. So there was no escaping it. It wasn't that there was one philosophy for the elite and one philosophy for others. They both had to subscribe, and their actions prescribed by the teachings. So the society was always set up that way. So when Buddhist scriptures or Buddhist teachings started coming into China, they were looked closely upon by both those schools, both those aspects of society, right? The ruling class versus the ruled class. And would these teachings replace these culturally inculcated belief systems? So they were very critical of them, right? So, naturally, a conflict arose, and the ruler summoned the two groups to meet and debate the issue. The adherents of non-Buddhist teachings were defeated by the supporters of Buddhism. After that, whenever the two groups engaged in polemics, the devotees of non-Buddhist scriptures were defeated by the Buddhists as easily as ice melts in the sun, or as a fire is extinguished by water. Eventually, they ceased to offer any effective opposition to Buddhism. As more Buddhist sutras were brought to China, it became apparent that some were superior in content or more profound than others. They belonged to different categories, such as Hinayana and Mahayana, exoteric and esoteric, provisional and true. To illustrate, all stones are invariably inferior to gold, but gold found in the human world, but gold itself is divided into several grades. No gold found in the human world can match the gold mined from the Jambu River, but the gold from the Jambu River is in turn far less valuable than the gold stored in the Brahma heaven. In the same way, all the Buddhist sutras are like gold, but some are finer and some more profound than others. Those sutras that are called Hinayana, or small vehicle, are like small boats. They can carry 2 or 3 passengers, but not 100 or 1,000. Even with only 2 or 3 persons aboard, they must remain close to this shore and cannot cross over to the other shore. There's that ship crossing the Sea of Sufferings analogy in another form, right? He continues, they can be loaded with a small amount of cargo, but not with a large amount. In contrast, the Mahayana Sutras are like those huge vessels that carrying 10 or 20 people can be and loaded with large quantities of cargo can sail from Kamakura as far as Tsukushi or Mutsu province. But the ship of the true Mahayana Sutra is incomparably greater than those huge ships that are other Mahayana Sutras. Sorry, my mouth is sticking to itself. I should have brought a beverage in here. Loaded with a hoard of rare treasures and carrying 100 or 1,000 passengers, it can sail all the way to the land of Korea. The sutra called the Lotus Sutra of the one vehicle is like this. Devadatta was the most unlife-affirming and negative teacher man in the entire land of Jambudvipa, but the Lotus Sutra predicted that he would become the thus come one heavenly king. Although Ajatasattu was a wicked king who killed his own father, He was among those present when the Lotus Sutra was preached, and after hearing only a verse or a phrase, formed a connection with the sutra that would enable him to attain enlightenment in the future. The Dragon King's daughter, right? We know this chapter in the Lotus Sutra. A woman with a reptile's body attained Buddhahood by listening to Bodhisattvas Manjushri preach the Lotus Sutra. Furthermore, the Buddha designated the evil era of the latter day of the law as the very time for the Lotus Sutra to be propagated, and bequeathed it to the men and women of that impure age, the Bodhisattvas of the earth. The Lotus Sutra, the teaching of the one vehicle, is then a sutra as great and as powerful as the ships of the China trade, known back then as the navigating force in the world, right? So he goes on, thus all the Buddhist sutras are to the non-Buddhist scriptures as gold is to stones, and all the various Mahayana sutras are such as the flower garden, garland, Mahavarachana, meditation, Amida, and wisdom sutras are to the Lotus Sutra as fireflies are to the sun or moon, or anthills to Mount Hua. Moreover, there is superiority and inferiority not only among the sutras, but also among their adherents. The various teachers of the True Word School, who believe in the Mahavarachana Sutra, are like fire being put out by water, or dew being blown away by the wind when confronted in debate by the votary of the Lotus Sutra. If a dog barks at a lion, its bowels will rot. The Ashura demon who shot an arrow at the sun had his head split into 7 pieces. The true word teachers are like a dog or the Ashuras, while the votary of the Lotus Sutra is like the sun or the lion. So he's establishing once again the superiority of the Lotus Sutra amongst all other teachings, Buddhist and non-Buddhist. Before the sun rises, ice is as hard as metal. Fire, when untouched by water, is as hot as molten iron. But even the hardest ice easily melts away in the summer sun, and even the hottest fire is easily extinguished by water. The various true word teachers appear to be most dignified and wise, but they are like one who, forgetful of the sun, expects ice to remain hard forever, or who, not taking water into account, thinks that fire will burn indefinitely. As you know, before the Mongol attack, the arrogance of the people of our day knew no bounds. Since the 10th month of the last year, however, none of them has dared to assume a haughty attitude, for, as you have heard, Nichiren alone predicted this foreign invasion. If the Mongols attack our country again, none of the people will have the courage to face them. They will be like a monkey terrified by a dog, or a frog cowering before a snake. This is solely because it is a country that, by allowing the votary of the Lotus Sutra, who is an emissary of Shakyamuni Buddha, to be hated by all the monks of the true word, Nembutsu precepts, and other schools, has harmed itself and incurred the particular wrath of the heavenly deities. In other words, they've ensured their servitude, basically, to outside forces because they've followed a flawed thinking in their what buoys their life. It gives them a life condition of strength that would keep away enemies and sickness and all of these sufferings of life. They've invested themselves in a flawed philosophy, and if they followed the true teachings of Mahayana and incorporated Buddha wisdom and Bodhisattva practices into their lives, they could have easily spiritually repelled these negative events. But they chose not to. They fall, and a big part of that blame falls on the rulers, because they're the ones sanctioning this behavior, right? You can see lots of corollaries to recent history in the world today. He goes on, thus all its people have become cowards. And this is indicative of authoritarian regimes. Authoritarianship isn't just the government and the elite. They gain power, and they gain that position of oppression on the people, because the people have turned lazy and are willing to be told what to do rather than to stand on their own dignity and decide what to do. Don't confuse arrogance and false bravado as courage or as strength. It is not. It is a wild flailing about of a coward and a lazy person. So this is what Nichiren is pointing out. He goes on. They are like fire fearful of water, a tree dreading the axe, a pheasant frightened out of its wits at the sight of a hawk, or a mouse threatened by a cat. Not one of them will be saved. And understand in Buddhism, savior doesn't come from outside. It doesn't come from a special being. It doesn't come from a god or will or whatever. Saved is an unfortunate translation here. What it really means is saving yourself. Adopting a mental attitude that considerably fortifies you and leads you towards your maximum potential, your Buddha-ness, right? That is being saved in Buddhism. It is a self-propelled saving. So I've got to come up with a better word to translate these books with, because that one's very misleading. Continuing, Nichiren says, at such a time, what will they do? In battles, soldiers regard the general as their heart. If the general were to lose heart, his soldiers would become cowards. So, in effect, again, the military analogy is present. Now, he gets to something, now that he's set the groundwork in this letter about the placement of the Lotus Sutra, the import of practicing correctly, now he's going to start addressing the recipients of this letter. He goes on. Women regard their husbands as their heart. Without their husband, they lack a heart. Nowadays, even married women find it difficult to get along in the world. Though you have lost your heart, you lead your life more courageously than those who have one. Furthermore, because you maintain your resolute mind and conviction in the deities and you revere the Buddha, you are indeed a woman who surpasses others. Setting aside the adherents of the Nembutsu and other schools, while I was in Kamakura, I had no way of determining whether a resolute mind of individual believers in the Lotus Sutra was deep or shallow. Or were they just playing the game so they could be spared or to look right, or were they really practicing Lotus Sutra Buddhism? This I came to know only after I had incurred the wrath of the authorities and had been exiled to the island of Sado. Though no one else came to visit me, you, a woman, not only sent me various offerings, but personally made the journey to see me. It was almost too amazing to be true. In addition, you have now called on me here in Minobu. I know of no words with which to thank you. Certainly the heavenly deities will protect you, and the 10 demon daughters will have compassion on you. The Buddha promised in the Lotus Sutra that for women, the sutra will serve as a lantern in the darkness, as a ship when they cross the sea, and a protector when they travel through dangerous places. So Nichiren is identifying something here for women of the time, certainly, but for a great history, human history, of women's perils when having to deal, especially traveling alone. Any man they encountered would be a serious danger to their lives, to their well-being. Do I need to list things like rape and theft and mugging and so on? I mean, this is a courageous woman to be traveling alone through samurai Japan to visit a monk who's been exiled and disliked, hated by the general people, not just samurai, but she's crossing people's farms, crossing people's lands. I mean, she took an inordinate amount of risk. So what does it take to do that? What kind of courage does it take to do that? You might say, well, she's pretty stupid to do that. But if she were stupid, she certainly would have succumbed to many, many obstacles, if she even survived the trip. So Nichiren's point is, it took a tremendous amount of resolve, a very resolute mind, not only in making the trip and meeting Nichiren, but Nichiren being the votary of MyoHoRenGeKyo. So she's driven, when he says her commitment to Buddha, he's not talking about Shakyamuni. He's not talking about himself. He's talking about her mission, her commitment to Buddha-ness, her Buddha-ness, her commitment to achieve her enlightenment. That's what drove her to go and visit the votary of the Lotus Sutra, Nichiren. Do you see? So he goes on in the letter. When the Tripitaka master Kumarajiva was carrying the Lotus Sutra to China, the heavenly king Vaishravana dispatched a vast number of troops to escort him safely over the Pamirs. When the Dharma teacher Dosho read the Lotus Sutra in the midst of a field, innumerable tigers gathered to protect him. There is no reason why you should not be protected in the same way. The 36 deities on earth and the deities of the 28 constellations in the heavens will lend you protection. Furthermore, human beings have 2 heavenly deities who always accompany them, just as a shadow follows the body. One is named same birth, and the other same name. Perched on one's left and right shoulders, they protect one by reporting all of one's deeds to heaven. Therefore, heaven never punishes those who have committed no error, let alone people of merit. So, this may sound familiar to you, because there are many religions that use this analogy of self-surveillance. It's a little different in Buddhism, and I'll explain why. Rather than having good judgment and bad judgment, angel, devil, whatever religion or philosophy you follow that deals with this aspect of the mind, and this is where Buddhism is focused. Always remember that. The analogy here is that human beings are always of multiple minds. Why? The analogy, the monkeys grove and the sal trees, all chirping and wanting attention at once. This is the human mind. The human mind falls into roughly 2 camps. Do I do something because it's a good thing empirically, or do I do what I want, which may be damaging to me? I really love M&M cake with solid sugar candies in it, so I could eat cake for breakfast, lunch, and dinner because I love it. Or does my more reasonable mind say, that's a sure way to diabetes and death, is that even if I'm partaking in it once in a while, it should be very seldom, and I should counter the effects of that indulgence with more reasonable thinking, and watch my diet and be healthy. Be healthy so that I can think clearly, so that by thinking clearly, I rule over my mind and make better choices and smart choices and enjoy my life, rather than wrapping myself in suffering for momentary pleasures that ultimately destroy me. Right? So these are the 2 sides of our minds constantly. This is samsara. The samsara splits our minds this way. And so the whole goal of Buddhism is to unify those minds under a superior mind, a mind of being the best possible human, to align our thinking with the thinking of all people, so that not only are we achieving our best possible life, but that we inspire that from others, and in so doing, alleviate or bring up the life condition of ourselves and our environment. So this is Buddhism, Buddhist way of thinking, right? So he's reinforcing in another analogy, basically, that if your goals, if your mental focus is always on that, on your Buddha-ness, on your ultimate potential, rather than slipping into a more ignorant kind of thinking, then how could you fail to succeed? So these are the analogies of Buddhism, the deities, if you will, or the heavens of things. These are present as your environs, as your environment, as you go through it. These are the forces that you influence in your own life. Because your life is not only interior, it is exterior. And both are one. So this is Buddhism, right? So now he's going to go on talking about how important this is. So this is why the great teacher Miao Lo stated, quote, "The stronger one's resolute mind and conviction, greater the protection of the deities." So again, this is internal, external. Deities is just us as our environmental expression of us. Follow? So long as one maintains firm, resolute mind, one is certain to receive the great protection of the environs, the deities. I say this for your sake. I know you're a resolute mind and have always been admirable, but now you must strengthen it more than ever. Only then will the 10 demon daughters lend you even greater protection. You need not seek far for an example. Everyone in Japan, from the sovereign on down to the common people, without exception, has tried to do me harm. But I have survived until this day. You should realize that this is because, although I'm alone, I have firm and a resolute mind and conviction. In the Lotus Sutra, MyoHoRenGeKyo. If a boat is handled by an unskilled steersman, it may capsize and drown everyone aboard. Likewise, though someone may have great physical strength, if he lacks a resolute spirit, even his many abilities will be of no use. In this country, there may be many wise people, but they cannot utilize their wisdom because they are governed by foolish leaders. And the leaders, as you may have picked up by now, are heavily intertwined with the traditional leaders of the True Word School, which badmouths the Lotus Sutra and maintain magical spells and mudras, hand positions, and mantras, all really in an effort to control people, which suits the samurai, the shogunate, just fine at that point in history. So this is what Nichiren's been targeting for years now, to get them to get off of their egomaniacal twistings of religion and governorship, because they're intertwined, as I have explained many times, and start to think, use their minds in the Lotus Sutra way to understand how their minds work, so that they can then govern effectively with wisdom rather than avarice, this greed and power hungry sort of way. Not an easy thing to defeat, by the way. It's still with us today. In the last Mongol invasion, he continues, tens of thousands of soldiers as well as civilians, both male and female, in Iki, Tsushima, and Kyushu, were killed, captured, drowned in the sea, or fell from cliffs to their death. Whew, I can't imagine the scene. If the Mongols attack again, this time they will wreak incomparably greater havoc, because they've already got a foothold, right? So they're inspired. Kyoto and Kamakura will meet the same fate as Iki and Tsushima. Prepare in advance and flee to some other place. At that time, those who declared that they would not see me listen to me will join their palms together and take a resolute mind in the Lotus Sutra. Even the adherents of the Nembutsu, Zen schools will chant Namu MyoHoRenGeKyo. The Lotus Sutra states that if there are men and women who have firm and resolute mind in this sutra, the Buddha will support them on his shoulders and carry them on his back. The Tripitaka master Kumarayana was carried by a wooden statue of Shakyamuni. When I was about to be beheaded, the world-honored one of great enlightenment took my place. It is the same in the present as it was in the past. All of you are my lay supporters, so how can you fail to attain Buddhahood? No matter whom you may marry, if he is an enemy of the Lotus Sutra, you must not follow him. Strengthen your resolve more than ever. Ice is made of water, but it is colder than water. Blue dye comes from indigo, but when something is repeatedly dyed in it, the color is even better than that of the indigo plant. The Lotus Sutra remains the same, but if you repeatedly strengthen your resolve, your color will be better than that of others, and you will receive more blessings than they do. Wood is vulnerable to fire, but sandalwood cannot be burned. Fire is extinguished by water, but the fire that cremated the Buddha's remains could not be quenched. Although flowers are scattered by the wind, those that bloom in the heavens of purity do not wither. Water evaporates in a time of great drought, but not if it enters the Yellow River. The wicked king named Dhamira did not incur punishment, even when he cut off the heads of Indian monks. But when he beheaded the venerable Aryashima, his sword fell to the ground, and his arm with it. When King Pushyamitra burned Kukutarama monastery to ashes, his head was split by the staves of the 12 deities. Likewise, the people of Japan, by becoming enemies of the Lotus Sutra, have brought ruin on themselves and their country. And because I proclaim this, I am called arrogant by those of little understanding. But I do not speak out of arrogance. It is simply that if I do not speak, I would not be the votary of the Lotus Sutra and actually be complicit in their evil, right? Moreover, when my words prove later to be true, people will be able to believe all the more readily. And because I write this down now, the people of the future will recognize my wisdom. And I think with that, I'm going to conclude this part 1 of this interesting Gosho. I hope you're following along. I hope this makes sense to you. If there's something that I've gone over that's given you pause or confusion, please let me know. That's what the comments section is for. And I can't help you if you don't let me know what you're thinking or what you need. Or correct me if you think I need correcting. It's a point of dialogue. And it's important for our entire Sangha. Not because I want to enter into any arguments with anyone, of course. But there's a lot of information here. And I'm certainly not perfect. I'm just a guy. I've been practicing a long time, and I've figured some things out. And I thought by sharing my insights and thoughts with all of you, that I might unclutter some of this deep language and translation problems, all that kind of thing. That's been my singular mission in doing all of this, along with expanding and deepening my own practice, just as Nichiren is advising. When he speaks to these others, I take it as though he's speaking to me. And so I take his wisdom very seriously and take it to heart. And I hope in some small way I can help you do the same and strengthen your practice too. Okay? MyoHoRenGeKyo. Thank you so much for being here. And just a reminder, in case you didn't see it on the screen, all of these videos are transcribed to audio files, and they're available on all your podcast platforms as the Buddhahood Podcast. All 3 words, the Buddhahood Podcast. See you soon. Bye-bye. MyoHoRenGeKyo.